Welcome to Life Stories, where sometimes the people we love the most are not who we thought they were. Imagine waking up one morning, thinking your life is solid, safe, and within a few words, everything you built comes crashing down. 15 years of memories, trust, and love, all called into question by a single devastating truth. How do you hold on to your family when the ground beneath it starts to crack? How do you fight for what is yours when the blood says otherwise? Today's story will pull you deep into a world where love is tested, loyalty is shattered, and the meaning of family is rewritten forever. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you believe about home, trust, and the human heart. And now, let's step into the story that changed one mother's life forever. It was a Tuesday, one of those days that carried the heavy quiet of things left unsaid. Olivia sat across from Ethan at the small oak kitchen table, the remnants of last night's chicken casserole growing cold between them. She barely noticed the muted clink of his fork against the plate until he said it, so casually it almost passed her by. "I think it's time for a DNA test," Ethan said between bites, as if discussing weatherproofing the deck. Olivia laughed at first, a brittle sound she didn't recognize. 15 years. 15 years of lullabies sung in hospital rooms, emergency runs for broken arms, late nights hunched over school projects. She thought he was joking. Ethan didn't laugh. He kept his eyes locked on his plate, his jaw tight. "What do you mean? A DNA test?" she asked, her voice thinner than she wanted. "I mean exactly that." He stabbed a piece of chicken, not looking at her. "I've had doubts for a long time." The air left the room. Olivia stared at him, feeling something cold unfurl in her chest. Something that told her this wasn't just about Liam anymore. This was about everything. They had met when she was 28, both bruised from past relationships, tired of games. Ethan wasn't exciting, but he was steady. A man who showed up when he said he would, who paid the bills, who built a life with her brick by brick. They'd gotten married in the church down the road and welcomed Liam a year later, after a grueling 20-hour labor that ended in a C-section. Ethan was there, holding her hand, crying when he saw their son for the first time. She had clung to that memory, worn it smooth in her mind like a river stone. But now, as she watched Ethan carve up his food with surgical precision, that memory cracked. That night, Olivia lay awake, the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the walls. She listened to Ethan's breathing beside her, steady and untroubled, and felt herself adrift in a life that suddenly didn't feel like hers. 2 days later, they sat in a sterile clinic under flickering fluorescent lights. Liam, oblivious, swung his legs from the edge of the exam table, humming to himself. Ethan told him it was just a routine test. Olivia said nothing. She couldn't find the words. The technician smiled too brightly, her eyes darting between Olivia and Ethan with a kind of forced cheerfulness that made Olivia's skin crawl. In the waiting room, Olivia tried to hold Ethan's hand. He kept his hands in his pockets. 9 days dragged by, each one heavier than the last. Ethan left earlier for work, stayed out later, came home smelling faintly of cigarette smoke and something more elusive. Distance. Detachment. He barely spoke to her. Liam noticed, of course. He pushed his peas around on his plate one night and asked, "Is Dad mad at you?" "No, sweetheart," Olivia lied, her heart breaking. On the fifth night, when the silence between her and Ethan became unbearable, she asked him quietly what had made him start doubting. Ethan didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Some things don't add up," he said. "The results will speak for themselves." It felt rehearsed, as if he already knew. The morning of the results, Olivia couldn't stomach her coffee. She sat rigid in the clinic's waiting room, her hands clenched in her lap. Ethan sat beside her, a statue of indifference. The doctor called them in. He was a short man with careful eyes, the kind of man who had seen marriages dissolve and families implode before, and knew better than to soften the blow. "Before I read the results," he said, folding his hands, "are you emotionally prepared for this?" Ethan gave a curt nod. Olivia didn't trust herself to speak. The doctor opened the file slowly. "The probability of paternity is 0%. Olivia didn't move. Her mind stalled like a car in the cold. Ethan exhaled through his nose, a long, knowing sound. "I knew it," he muttered. But the doctor wasn't finished. His eyes lingered on Olivia, and something in his gaze shifted from professional detachment to genuine concern. "There's something else," he said, flipping to another page. "As part of the protocol, we also ran a maternity analysis. I'm afraid." He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Alden, you are not biologically related to Liam either." Silence. A silence so complete it swallowed sound, swallowed breath. Ethan sat up straight, his face draining of color. "What the hell are you saying?" The doctor's voice softened. "It's extremely rare, but mistakes do happen. A neonatal switch, likely at the hospital." Olivia gripped the edge of the chair, willing the room to stop spinning. Every image, every memory, Liam's first steps, his giggling first words, his warm body curled into hers on stormy nights, flashed before her eyes. She knew her son. She knew him. And yet the blood said otherwise. On the ride home, Ethan didn't say a word. As soon as they stepped inside, he threw his keys on the counter and turned to her. "You had one job," he said, his voice low and savage. "One job." Then he walked upstairs and slammed the guest room door behind him. Later that night, Olivia found herself sitting on the cold kitchen floor, an old box of hospital records scattered around her, wristbands, faded birth certificates, Polaroid photos of a baby swaddled in blue, a younger version of herself beaming through exhaustion and morphine haze. She clutched one photo to her chest, tears streaming silently down her face. The boy she had raised was hers. Paperwork, blood tests, none of it could erase 15 years of love. But deep inside, something else stirred. A dark, urgent need she couldn't ignore. She had to find out what happened. She had to find out who her son truly was. What would you do if everything you believed about your family turned out to be a lie? Can love survive the weight of a truth too heavy to carry? And somewhere, not too far away, a woman with red hair and a boy who looked nothing like her was about to ask the same question. Continue to part 2. Olivia drove aimlessly for hours after the blow-up with Ethan, the photo of baby Liam still clutched in her trembling hand. Streets blurred into one another, a slurry of headlights and empty sidewalks, but she barely noticed. Her heart was an anchor dragging through mud. Her whole life had cracked wide open, and she didn't even know where to begin putting it back together. By the time she pulled into the parking lot of St. Vincent's Memorial Hospital, the sun was sinking low behind the old brick building, throwing long, bruised shadows across the asphalt. She stared at the hospital's facade, a place that had once held so much joy, and now seemed to pulse with betrayal. Inside, the lobby smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. A receptionist, young and distracted, smiled thinly as Olivia approached. Olivia's voice wavered only slightly as she said, "I need to speak to someone about a neonatal error from 15 years ago." The woman blinked, unprepared, and after a few awkward exchanges and a lot of waiting, Olivia found herself in a small, windowless office with a woman named Diana Lively. Her hair was gray, her eyes weary but not unkind. "I remember you," Diana said before Olivia could even start. "Room 207. Emergency C-section. We nearly lost you." The words hit harder than they should have. Olivia sat down heavily, stunned that anyone still remembered. "I think my son," Olivia swallowed, forcing herself to say it out loud. "I think he was switched at birth." Diana didn't flinch. Instead, she unlocked a battered file cabinet and pulled out a slim binder, thick with dust. "We were transitioning to digital records back then. Some files still survive." Her fingers moved down the page with practiced ease. 3 births that day. 2 boys, 1 girl. You were the only C-section." Olivia leaned forward, every nerve on edge. Is it possible? Someone made a mistake? Diana hesitated just long enough to answer without words. "That week was a mess," she admitted. 2 nurses out sick. The maternity ward understaffed. I won't lie to you. It's possible." Olivia's hands curled into fists. "I need names." Diana shook her head sadly. "HIPAA laws prevent me from giving you that. You'll need a lawyer. Maybe a subpoena." The word hit like a hammer. Lawyers. Court battles. Liam dragged into a media storm he didn't deserve. It was a nightmare without end. Still, Olivia refused to let despair root her to the spot. If she couldn't go through official channels, she would find another way. Something, someone had to know more. She remembered a face, a blur in a photo. A young nurse with blonde hair looking startled, her badge crooked. She clutched at that memory like a lifelike. A nurse that night? Olivia asked. Early 20s, blonde, thin. She's in one of my hospital photos. Diana's brow furrowed. Mara Penbrook, she said after a moment. New hire. First month on the job, she quit 2 weeks later. No forwarding address. Panic and determination clashed inside Olivia's chest. She needed to find this Mara. She needed answers. She needed truth, whatever ugly shape it might take. With Nathan Marks's help and a private investigator who specialized in the kinds of cases polite society pretended didn't exist, it took 4 long days to track her down. Mara Jennings now, living 2 hours north in a town so small it barely had a post office. Working in a flower shop. Hiding in plain sight. Olivia didn't tell anyone where she was going. Not even Ethan, who had yet to come home. The flower shop smelled of lilies and eucalyptus, a sharp contrast to the rotting fear in Olivia's gut. The bell above the door chimed softly as she stepped inside. Behind the counter, a woman looked up, mid-30s, blonde hair tied back in a messy knot, her face pale as paper. Their eyes met, and Olivia knew. She knew. "Can I help you?" Mara asked, her voice a thin thread. Olivia took a slow breath. "I'm Olivia Alden. I gave birth at St. Vincent's Memorial January 4th, 2009. You were there." Mara's face crumpled, all color draining away. She looked around as if searching for an escape route. Then, very quietly, she said, "Come to the back." In a room cluttered with buckets of carnations and half-assembled bouquets, Mara sank onto an overturned crate. She didn't meet Olivia's eyes. "I was new," she said. "It was chaos that night. 2 women in labor at the same time. One natural, one emergency." "Me," Olivia said. Mara nodded. "There was a mix-up with the bassinets. The ID bands, they got switched somehow. I thought I had it right. I wasn't even supposed to be unsupervised." Olivia gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles whitened. "Did you tell anyone?" "I tried." Mara's voice broke. "My supervisor told me to stay quiet. That bringing it up would ruin lives for no good reason. She said it was probably nothing, and I didn't fight her. I quit instead." "And the other mother?" Mara hesitated, then whispered, "Her name was Rachel. Rachel Blake. She had a son, too." Olivia felt like the floor dropped out from under her. Liam had a counterpart, a mirror self raised by another family. Mara scribbled an address on the back of a floral business card. "That's all I remember. I'm sorry." Sorry wasn't enough. It wouldn't fix 15 years of misplaced love and fractured identity. But it was a start. Driving home, Olivia's mind raced. How could she face Liam? How could she tell him he might belong to someone else, and yet still belong to her in every way that mattered? And deeper still, gnawing at the edges of her mind, was a darker question. What if Rachel Blake already knew and was preparing to claim him? If you discovered the child you raised wasn't biologically yours, would you fight to keep them or let them go? What secret is Rachel Blake hiding? And how far will Olivia go to protect the only son she has ever known? The storm was only beginning, and Olivia was about to find out that losing Liam wasn't the only threat looming over her fractured world. Stay tuned for the next part of the story. The next few days passed like a slow, relentless tide pulling Olivia under. She barely ate. She barely slept. Every time she looked at Liam, her heart clenched with a desperate, aching love. How do you tell your child that fate had played a cruel joke before he ever had a chance to choose? Nathan, her lawyer, moved quickly. Through a series of tense phone calls and legal maneuvers, he arranged a quiet meeting with Rachel Blake. Olivia insisted on it being somewhere neutral. A small park on the edge of town, away from curious eyes and judgmental stares. Saturday came, gray and cold, the kind of weather that seemed to strip color from the world. Olivia bundled Liam into the car without telling him the full truth, only that they were meeting someone important. He didn't ask many questions, just stared out the window, headphones plugged into his ears, shutting out a world that had already failed him once. Rachel was already there when they arrived, standing under a bare oak tree with a boy who could have been Liam's shadow. Same height, same unruly curls, but something different in the way he held himself, more cautious, more guarded. The two boys stared at each other, something ancient and instinctive passing between them that no words could touch. Olivia approached Rachel slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Rachel looked older than she had expected, her auburn hair streaked with gray, deep lines around her mouth. But her eyes, sharp, assessing, were the eyes of a woman who had built her life around a fragile hope and now watched it shatter. "You must be Olivia," Rachel said, her voice steady but cool. Olivia nodded. "And you're Rachel." Neither of them reached out. There were no easy gestures here, no simple forgiveness. "I think we need to talk," Rachel said, glancing at the boys. They found a bench, leaving Liam and Caleb to sit awkwardly by the swings. For a long moment, the mothers just watched their sons, two strangers tethered by invisible threads. "I always knew something was wrong," Rachel said finally, her voice low. "Caleb, he never looked like Ray. Blood types didn't match, but everyone said it happens sometimes. I believed them because I had to." "So did I," Olivia whispered. Rachel turned to her sharply. "You know this could ruin everything for them. They're almost grown. They have their lives." "I know," Olivia said. "I don't want to take Caleb away from you. I don't want Liam ripped apart either. But they deserve to know the truth. We all do." Rachel looked away, her hands clenching into fists. "Ray doesn't know. He left 2 years ago. He couldn't handle a lot of things. Caleb is all I have left." The weight of that sank heavy between them. Olivia thought of Ethan, gone without even the decency of a goodbye, leaving her to hold the ruins alone. "They're our sons," Olivia said softly. "Maybe not by blood, but by love, by choice." Rachel's face twisted, a complex knot of anger, sadness, and fear. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she said. "You are," Olivia said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "We both are. For them." They agreed on small steps, a few meetings, no sudden upheavals. Give the boys time to understand what words could never fully explain. But life rarely obeys plans. 2 weeks later, Caleb showed up at Olivia's door unannounced. He stood there awkwardly, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket, looking so much like Liam it made Olivia's throat tighten. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course," she said, stepping aside. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Ethan had shattered her world not so long ago. "I found some pictures," Caleb said, pulling a crumpled photograph from his pocket. It was a photo of Olivia, holding baby Liam, beaming with a love that even 15 years couldn't erase. "I don't remember you," Caleb said, voice cracking. "But I don't feel like a stranger either." Olivia reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't pull away. "You don't have to remember," she said. "Love doesn't care about memory. It just is." He nodded, eyes shining, and Olivia realized then that her heart was large enough to hold both boys, not as replacements or mistakes, but as miracles stitched into her life in a way biology could never define. Later that night, Liam came to her room, standing hesitantly in the doorway. "Mom," he said. She sat up quickly. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Am I still your son?" Tears blurred her vision. She crossed the room and pulled him into a fierce hug. "You are my son," she whispered against his hair. "You always were. You always will be." In the end, the hospital settled quietly. Money changed hands, documents were signed, but none of it mattered. No check could undo the years lost, the pain carved into all their hearts. Olivia declined the confidentiality agreement. She needed her story to live, to breathe, to find others like her lost in the wreckage of human error and human choice. The final twist came not from the courts, but from life itself. At a barbecue one humid summer evening, Caleb showed up with a basketball under one arm and a grin on his face. Liam challenged him to a one-on-one game, and under the fading sunset, the two boys ran and laughed and fought like brothers who had known each other forever. Watching them from the porch, Olivia realized that sometimes family isn't about blood or paperwork or even history. Sometimes it's about who stays, who fights for you when the rest of the world falls away. She had lost so much: a husband, a version of her past, a comfortable lie, but she had gained something purer, a fierce, messy, enduring kind of love, the kind that could never be switched, stolen, or lost again. What emotions did this story leave you with? If you love this story, comment 100 below. Where are you watching from? Share this story with your friends, and thank you for being part of Life Stories.